Way down in the earth where it's quiet under the weeds, Mr. Worm reads!
Are we live? Hello, and welcome to Mr. Worm Reads. I am your host, Mr. Worm. My guest today is Scott SanGiacomo. He is the author and illustrator of the graphic novel Bedhead Ted. Let's connect with Scott now.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
I can. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Mr. Worm.
It is so nice to meet you. Did I say your last name correctly?
Yes, San Giacomo, if you're feeling really Italian, because it is an Italian surname, San Giacomo, both are correct.
Oh, interesting. Where are you coming to us from today?
I'm coming to you from my studio in Massachusetts.
I see you have a lot of books behind you. Do you have a favorite book?
Oh, I know, right? It's a tough question. Well, if I had to pick one, and there's so many books that are important to me, I'd pick Curious George Goes to the Hospital by Margaret and H.A. Ray. I remember my mother reading that book to me when I was young, so that's a special one.
I read that you got to work on a Curious George book. Tell us about that.
I did, 12 in fact.
12? Wow.
I was really fortunate to be part of an incredible team of artists that illustrated the New Adventures of Curious George series. That includes Curious George and the Puppies, Curious George Makes Pancakes, Curious George Goes to a Chocolate Factory, just to name a few off the top of my head.
That is amazing. From reading those books as a kid to working on them as a grown up. What was that like?
Oh, it was an absolute honor to carry on Margaret and H.A. Ray's legacy. I was such a fan of those original Curious George books growing up, and H.A. Ray as an illustrator was always one of my favorites. It was truly a once in a lifetime opportunity. And I have to mention, to be part of such an unbelievable illustration team, Mike Jensen, Doug Fackel, Chin Mei Yu, the late Chris Becker. It really was a special experience, and I'm so grateful to have been a part of it. I learned so much.
Now, did you always want to be an author and illustrator?
Well, from a very young age, Mr. Worm, I knew I wanted to be an artist, but I don't really consider myself an author, and I know that sounds strange. I consider myself a cartoonist. I mean, to me, a cartoonist is an artist that combines words and pictures to tell a story, and that's what I do.
Tell me, is there a cartoonist that inspired you?
Another tough one, Mr. Worm. I mean, Charles Schultz definitely. I mean, who doesn't love Peanuts, Charlie Brown, and Snoopy? But probably the cartoonist that had the biggest influence on me was Berkeley Breathed. He created a comic strip called Bloom County. Its cast of characters, the whole world he created was really inspiring. The comic strip could be funny and silly, but also political and sometimes heartwarming and even poignant. It just had everything, and it really changed the way I thought about characters and storytelling at a very pivotal time in my learning and development.
Well, since we're talking about inspiration, what inspired you to write your graphic novel, Bedhead Ted?
I feel like I'm always collecting inspiration. Ideas come from experiences or situations. For Bedhead Ted, I wanted to create a story about the power of being yourself, believing in yourself, and that sometimes the things you may not be confident about or like about yourself are the key to your superpower. I think we all have a superpower. Maybe you're a great writer or listener. Maybe you're really good with numbers or math. You're a great friend. Whatever it may be, we all have gifts we share. And I think sometimes we forget or don't fully realize that. Because I grew up loving comics, I thought this would be the perfect story for a graphic novel. So that's the inspiration.
Well, I really enjoyed the book. I really loved going back and finding all of the hidden buttercups. Now, I won't give too much away, but if you read the book, you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, thank you so much. I love that character, and I thought it would be a lot of fun for readers.
Can you tell me how you made the book?
Of course, for Bedhead Ted and for most of my books, I start with a series of sketches, often in my sketchbook. For me, the ideas almost always come from drawings. Then, when I think I have enough ideas maybe for a story, I write a summary. That's just basically the main plot points. And then I'll write an outline. That's where I break down each chapter. And then what I do is I start here, I'll show you. So this is a very rough layout, often called a thumbnail. This is where I start writing the dialogue and I create the manuscript. Now, a manuscript is like a script for a movie or a play. Here's an example of what that looks like. You can see how I break down each page panel by panel. Now, I should say, this is just the way I do it. I encourage a cartoonist to find their own process and what works best for them. But this is just what works best for me. Now, at this stage of the process, I'm always changing and revising. It's very loose, and I'm reworking these pages several times before I get them right. Once I have all the pages worked out the way I want them, I'll go back and I'll start the final art. For this book, I used a brush and ink on Bristol board. Bristol board is like a heavy paper. Here's an example. You can see how things change too. For instance, the house in the first panel. Then what I do is I scan the drawings and bring them into Adobe Photoshop, where I add the word balloons and the text and the color and the shading.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I love seeing the sketches and learning about the whole process. It sure is a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, but process is important. That joy of creating each page is what's fun. It's great to have a finished product at the end, don't get me wrong, but you have to enjoy the steps along the way. I think it's important to remember that. Sometimes we all have the tendency to rush, to finish something, to get to the end, to say, we did it. But the real joy is making the art.
Well, we are just about out of time. I know. Well, I have two final questions I like to end with. Question number one. When you're not making books, what do you like to do? Do you have any hobbies?
Well, I love spending time with my dog Theo. We love to walk in the woods. I love music. I love listening to music and making music. I play the drums as well. I love to cook. I've got lots of hobbies.
Question number two, and my last question. Where can we learn more about you and your books?
Yes, you can visit bedheadted.com and you can find my books at your local library or your favorite bookstore.
Scott, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you so much, Mr. Worm. It was a lot of fun.
Bye bye. Well, friends, that's our show for today. Thank you so much for watching. And remember, to learn more about Scott, you can visit his website. I'll put it up on the screen again. There you go. And be sure to go to your local library and check out Bedhead Ted. I think you will really enjoy it. I sure did. Remember, it's a good day to read a book. See you next time. Bye bye.